What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. Today I'm going to be chatting with a Diesel Podcast listener. His name's Austin, and he is extremely passionate about Ford trucks, especially 6-liters. He's got a really cool build going on that we wanted to share with all of you guys. So if you're into 6.0s, Fords, Powerstrokes, or just diesel in general and just love hearing stories about restoring, building one, finding one for a really good deal, and being able to kind of take your time with it and invest into the parts that you want, you're going to love this episode. Before we get to it, we want to remind you guys, take advantage of Kershaw Knives and a deal they have going for our listeners or one of the sponsors of the podcast. You get 20% off site-wide. Just use code diesel20 at kershaw.kiausa.com. They got a ton of choices for any budget, whether you need something for EDC, hunting, fishing, outdoors, around the house, at the job site. They got a ton of stuff, so make sure you head on over to their site, check it out. Also want to encourage you guys, make sure and join our Discord. You're going to see a code up on the screen. There's a lot of really cool conversations, awesome builds, episode suggestions, guest suggestions you guys might have. It's a great place to drop it. Also YouTube as well. We check the comments on there in our videos and want to thank you guys for helping really the last couple months, helping the channel grow. All the awesome suggestions you guys have given. If you're not subscribed on there, make sure you definitely do it. Turn on notifications, like, comment, help us reach more people that might be looking for information on 6-liters or really any Powerstroke, Cummins, or Duramax. And it goes a long way to be able to help them find these episodes so they can get the answers that they need. All right, let's get to today's episode with Austin and chatting about his 6-liter Powerstroke obsession and his current build. Austin, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I'm excited to chat with you today, and I love talking about 6-liters. I mentioned that before on the podcast, and for anyone that's listening or checking in on YouTube, make sure you guys subscribe, turn on notifications, like, comment, because there's so many people that are looking for information from 6-liters are going to find your episode, hear our chat today. It's a great way to be able to reach new people, and I mean, I'm pumped to chat with you. I love seeing the engine behind you. You got a great story, so welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate being here, and I guess I got to give a big thanks to Anthony over at J&K because he's the one who tagged you. And yeah, I never thought anything of it. I was like, oh yeah, that'll never happen. And then you messaged me, and I was like, I'll try to play it cool, and act not, that excited, but I was like a little girl inside, So.
Well, I saw that he tagged you, and I clicked over to your Instagram. And I saw pictures of the motor and was checking out your truck. And I thought, this is really cool because there's somebody out there that wants to do this. So walk us through your passion for Ford, for Powerstrokes, how it all started for you.
Gosh, I mean, I think I've loved trucks literally my whole life, probably since I was 3 years old. I think I fell in love with just trucks in general, probably, God, as far as I can remember back, and I was always obsessed with, Bigfoot, Bigfoot's a Ford. I had, the Power Wheels, Bigfoot when I was younger. I don't really know where I really found the passion for Fords in general, but I would definitely say it was around high school. I think the first time is when I heard, like a 7.3 straight piped, and then people were saying, oh yeah, you can tune them and stuff. And, this was back in like, 03, 04 probably. And, I always wanted a diesel truck, and I couldn't really afford one, back then. So, my first truck was, it was an F-150 5.4. 2-wheel drive, actually, surprisingly. Like, everybody was so surprised when I bought a 2-wheel drive. It was lifted and stuff, and it was a cool truck. And for that time, it did probably suit me well because I literally beat the crap out of that truck. And at that time, I really wasn't that great of a mechanic back then. So I was always asking friends and stuff, for help if, little things would happen and whatnot. And so I finally sold that, and dang fly flying around in here. I finally sold that, and I think in about 05, 06, I bought my first diesel truck, and it was a 99 7.3. And it had almost 300,000 miles on it. And I bought it from this used car dealership. I went down there, I sold my F-150, and I think I bought it for, I think around 10 grand. It was an extended cab, short bed, four-wheel drive, white. All my trucks have been white for some reason, and yeah, and I bought it. I bought it right there on the spot, and right away came home, cut the exhaust off. I think I was, yeah, because I was about like 18 or 19 then. Cut the exhaust off. I bought a Super Chips off my friend, old Super Chips micro tuner, and yeah, so lifted it a little bit, and then, probably around that time, like that's kind of when like the forums and stuff kind of started like happening. And I remember the first time too, I saw a Diesel Power magazine. I was working for this guy, and on my lunch break, I went to this like liquor store and I saw, a Diesel Power magazine, and I was like, holy crap, because you would always see, the diesel trucks and the 4x4 magazines or whatever. I'm like, wow, they actually have, their own magazine now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And my friend, he introduced me to a forum called SoCaps, Southern California Powerstrokes. And so then they were having a meeting down at this place called Sunrise Ford. So we ended up going to this meeting, me and a friend that had another 7.3. And it was literally like, there's probably like 150 trucks there. It was like their biggest event, at that time. And they had a dyno event going on, and, a show and shine thing. And it was literally like the coolest thing ever. And at that point, like I was sold. I was like, all right, this is what I love, And I wasn't really like, working as a mechanic at that time. I was doing like a construction job. And I really didn't think, that I was actually going to make it, as my job at that time, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I just fell in love with Fords in general, and of course the Powerstroke platform. But it's kind of, it's kind of in my genetics though, really. My grandpa, he worked for Ford at a dealership as a tech for like 40 years, his first job, and it was his last job. He started there when he was 19, and he retired from there when he was like 60 something years old, So yeah, I mean, I literally like ended up, my dad really, he wasn't in my life a whole lot, but he was really into trucks, lifted trucks and all that stuff. And it's just kind of funny because like genetically, I ended up just like them,
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then long story short, my 7.3, so I was having some issues with my 7.3 and my old job that I used to work at, my old boss, he would kind of help me with my 7.3 time to time. And then he was like, like, why don't you just work here? Why don't you just, you love trucks or whatever, why don't you just, make your job, your hobby or whatever kind of thing. And so, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I should, right? So right away, I actually, I started working on 6.0s. And it was kind of funny because at that time, like I was kind of a little bit of a 6.0 hater, like I was like, because everyone was like, oh, 7.3s are like, God's gift to, the diesel, or, to the Powerstroke platform, there's some, diehard, 7.3 guys out there or whatever. And so, yeah, I started working on 6.0s and I realized like, man, I like these more than 7.3s actually. Like you can do some stuff to these, and the transmission, the 5Rs, they're really good transmissions. I mean, the 4Rs, once they're built, like in the 7.3s, they can be really stout, but right out of the box, the 5R 110 is, pretty stout trans. And just tuning alone in those trucks, I mean, you can make, 4 to 450, horsepower, and they're a lot of fun, with just tuning alone, and I got really good, at working on them. And, I just kind of fell in love with them. I sold my 7.3 And I was like, I'm buying a 6.0. Everyone's like, no way, really? I go, yep, I'm buying a 6.0. I'm sold. I'm done with the 7.3 life, you know?
what's
And
what's really interesting about your story is how similar it is to mine. And
yeah.
growing up, I remember Bigfoot. That was like my first introduction to, well, look how cool this truck is. And
Oh,
our stories vary a little bit in that I grew up in a Ford family and I had to be different,
yeah.
so I couldn't like Fords. But
Yeah.
I had moved from Colorado to Southern California to go to college, and I saw the truck scene there was totally different than Colorado.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
would see lifted trucks, the off-roading, guys go into the desert. And it was like my first introduction to like how big the hobby was. And
Yeah.
you mentioned Sunrise Ford, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I had a friend bought a 6 liter. It was brand new. I think it was an '05 or '06 or something.
Yeah.
And I think he was on that forum because I went to a dyno day with him. I
Yeah. I
remember we
think I
went,
remember you mentioning that actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
we went there, and this was like late '07 because they had the 6.4s there.
Yep.
And Mike from No Limit Fab had a maroon lifted 7.3, and I remember it rolled into the dyno, and I'm like, that thing sounds so loud. And there's just a ton of
Yep.
guys, they're really excited, and it was that's just kind of what started it. And then when you mentioned, hey, I didn't know, I would get into this as sort of a career. The guy said, hey, why don't you work here? Well, it's kind of similar for me. I thought, hey, what do I want to do? I've been
Yeah.
introduced to this truck scene. The guys are really cool, so it's really interesting how the passions can start and then intertwine together.
Oh yeah. You were probably there at the event that I was at. I swear. I mean, it was definitely, God, I think it was around '07 that I went to that event. Yeah, and Mike was there with
Yeah.
his maroon truck, and it had like the dual stacks and everything. And I think I was there even the day he bought his 6.4, his green Godzilla truck. So you might have been there when I was there. Who knows? I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, I mean, it's so true. I kind of feel like to be good at your job, you kind of have to like it and, kind of love it. And, that's kind of, other jobs in the past, it just wasn't me, I just, I did some jobs before where I was running equipment and stuff. And, I like that. I like tractors and all that kind of stuff. It's cool. But, the truck stuff was just a whole nother thing. I never really thought that I would get this into it. I've been into trucks my whole life, but I never really saw me doing it, as a job. And I was never really, like I said, that great of a mechanic. I mean, I could do stuff, of course, but I would be like a little hesitant to like pull my trans or,
Yeah.
pull my engine. Like I would do it, but I would definitely need some guidance or whatever. And kids nowadays, they have like, I'm kind of like in that half, you know, generation where it's like the internet or YouTube really wasn't like,
It wasn't that big.
no, like when I was in high school, and then even a little bit afterwards, now there's so many videos on everything and forums and, you got the Facebook forums, which really help. And, there's just so much more information out there, so I mean, I remember even when I was a kid, with my F-150, since my grandpa worked at the dealership and stuff, he had already retired, but I would go down there and I would like pull into the back, back where their workshop was. And, I'd bug some of those guys, and I could tell like sometimes they were a little bit annoyed with me and, and like, now I know what I know and people are messaging me and asking me things. I'm like, okay, maybe I do see why they're a little bit annoyed sometimes, whatever. But I love talking to people and, I love helping people, if I can. And, but, yeah, me and, a few other guys that I work with at my work, they all kind of feel the same way. We all kind of drive and, own the trucks that we work on. I'm primarily Ford. I've done a little stuff on Cummins and Duramaxes, but it's always so in between when I work on them. Like I almost kind of just forget everything, and I hear a lot of the hearsay talk about the other trucks, but I generally, don't really work on anything, but Fords. And of course, 6 liters, they're kind of my bread and butter, of course, so, and it's kind of funny because I'm really not even that great at working on 7.3s, even though I own one, it was like, once I started working on 6.0s, like, that was it. And I also work on 6.4s a lot and 6.7s too, I love the 6.7 platform. And, I think that, the 6.7 trucks, to me, they're probably the best truck you could buy. They've got the full package, the drivetrain, trans, fuel system. And they're really not that hard to work on either, they're eventually, I may sell my '07 and get into a 6.7, but, I own my '07, I don't have a payment on it. It's just really nice, like, the truck market now, it's just so high. It's just crazy,
Yeah.
So it's nice owning your vehicles outright. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I would love to get into a 6.7. I drive like an Illuma or something at my work. And then I get into my '07 after work or something. I'm like, man, what a piece of junk. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm happy, because if it breaks, if it sits in the corner or whatever, it's paid for, I don't, if I got a new 6.7, of course I'd be doing stuff to it, and then I break it, but, and then I still got $1,000, truck payment or something. I'd be really sad, but eventually that will happen, so when the time is right.
You're telling me a little bit before the podcast something about this build and how it took some time because there were some things you wanted to make sure, that didn't happen. And I think a lot of truck owners and diesel enthusiasts get in this position where whether it's a 6-liter or a 5.9 or a Duramax, they have big plans for it. They want an engine that looks like what's right behind you. But you think,
Trying to fly out of my face.
You think like, what if I break something, or what if I take it someplace? So tell us about how you decided to build this truck, what your goals were for it, and how you've put it all together.
Yeah, so back in probably, let's see, I think 2014 or 2015, a friend messaged me, and I already had that idea in my head, that I wanted to buy a play truck, something that I could mess around with. And my brother, he also actually works with me, and he actually had a single cab, standard cab, long bed 2-wheel drive, and he tuned it and stuff. He just had gearhead tunes on it, I think with like SRL plus, and that truck ripped. I mean, it was so fast for just a stock. It was like, how like some trucks are just, for some reason, they're just faster than other trucks, like no two trucks are almost kind of alike, his truck was like, it was a freak truck, just tuned only. I mean, that thing ripped. And, so I already had that idea in my head, like I want to buy a single cab, but I want a 4-wheel drive one. And for some reason I had like this weird fascination with '03s, the first year of the 6.0, and I remember the first time I ever drove a 6-liter, it was an '03. And when they first came out, they were so fast, especially compared to like a stock 7.3 or even kind of a tune 7.3. I mean, they ran so good, those
they did.
And so a friend messaged me around that time, I think like 14 or 15, I believe. And he sent me a Craigslist ad with the truck, and he was like, yeah, I'm thinking about buying this truck. And I'm like, oh man, that thing is awesome, and in the ad, it said, needs engine, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, yeah, I mean, you should buy it. That thing's awesome, and he goes, okay. And then, so he texts me a couple of days later. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to buy it. I mean, I just really don't have the funds right now or the time or whatever. So I was like, okay. I'm like, well, would you mind if, I bought the truck? Like, would you get mad if I bought the truck? And he's like, no, dude, like you buy the truck. I know you've been looking for a truck like that too. And, so I was like, okay. So I called the guy and I just talked to him I talked to him for probably like 10 minutes, and he goes, you know what, Austin, I'm going to take it off the listing. The truck's yours. I can tell you want it. You're passionate about the truck or whatever, so I'll take it off the listing. It's yours. I was like, all right, cool. He wanted $2,000 for the truck. And, on the phone, he was like, it's broken, right? It doesn't run, and I'm like, that's fine. Like, that's what I want. I'm going to put an engine in it and, it's going to be my project, play truck. And, I was looking for a truck that I could buy cheap, and then I could just, mess around with it and do whatever I wanted to it. So I went up there the first time. It was like, his house was off of this road called like Canaan Road, and you can take that to like Malibu or whatever. And he was up on like this crazy hillside. And the first time I went up there, I went with my old boss and his gooseneck trailer, and we couldn't even get up there because it was like this tight, crazy spot. But I got to look at the truck, and talk to the guy, and he was like, "Yeah, I already took it off the listing, Austin. It's yours. So like, whenever you want to come get it, like, come get it. It's yours. Like, don't worry about it." So I said, "Okay, cool." And I gave him like, I think like $500 down or something just to hold it for me, just in case. And so then I went back up there with my truck and a little bit smaller trailer, and I was able to get on the trailer and get it home and all that stuff. And so what happened was it had a bad a lifter failed. And then the needle bearings, went through the low pressure pump, locked up the low pressure pump. And so I brought it home, or I brought it back to my old work, actually. Was kind of looking at it, and I ran the IDS, the computer on it, just to see what was going on with it. Wasn't making any oil pressure, wasn't making any low oil pressure. So, originally though, when I bought it, I was just gonna, I was like, oh, I'll just throw like a used short block, do, put some heads on it, stud it, tune it, and just kind of just play around with it, And then, some time passed, and, just life and just different things, kind of get in the way. And the truck sat for like a really long time. And, I was thinking about maybe just pulling the engine out, sending it to the machine shop and having the machine shop go through it for a while, and I kind of just, was playing with, different ideas and stuff. I was trying to do something cheaply as possible just to get it running, all I wanted to do was just kind of drive the truck, and then, so some more time went by, literally, God, this was probably in like a 5-year span, like no lie, and so finally, I think it was in 2020, I believe, I brought the truck home eventually, and then 2020, me and a friend, actually, I pulled the engine out at my house. I work at a shop, right? But I decided I was going to pull my engine out in the street, right in front of my house. And so we hadn't paved like the side of my house. Now we got nice concrete, and that's kind of where that's where it's, sitting right now. That's where I'm going to put the engine in. But me and a friend pulled the engine out in the street. One day I think I pulled the trans out, and then I pulled the engine out. I was like, I don't care. I don't have the engine for it yet. I don't have like really any plans for it, but I just want to do something with it. I would see all these other people, I watch a lot of different people on YouTube, and, I follow it, all the big, 6.0 liter known guys, out there, like Jesse Warren, Charlie Keeter, Charlie Fish, all those guys, so I'm always watching their stuff, and I'm just like, man, all those guys just, inspire me, they're like the big dogs, I guess, in the 6.0 world. So I was like, I just got to do something. I don't care. Like, I got to pull the engine out. I just got to make some progress on the truck. Like, I'm just tired of it sitting there, So yeah, finally me and a friend pulled it out. I got the engine out. So for a long time, it was, well, not a long time, but probably for like 5-6 months, it sat there with no engine. And so now at my new job, 805 diesel, I probably started working there in 2017, maybe 2018. We were buying engines from J&K. We were buying short blocks, long blocks, 6.0, 6.4s, some 6.7s too from them. And we've always had really, really good luck with them. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a short block from them, just a stock short block, at that time. I was like, that's all I need, because still at this point, I was like, I just want to put, an engine together, and tune it and just drive it, but I was like, I'm just gonna, cut all the middleman machining and all that work out of it and just buy a short block, So, yeah, I ordered up a short block from them, and it's all stock, actually, stock cam, I think it's got like 30 over pistons. But that's really it. Stock rods. And, the stock short block though on the 6.0 is actually, I mean, it's pretty stout from the factory,
Yeah.
but the top end, the head bolts and all that stuff, that's the weaker part. But this, the short block portion part of the 6.0 is actually pretty stout, and there's some guys that are pushing some big power with the stock short block, and stock cam and everything. But I do kind of really regret. I wish I would have done a cam. I wish I would have done a lot of other stuff. But that was kind of like in my budget at the time. It's just a stock short block, and I was like, I'll do heads on it, and I already had regular, ARPs already for it. I got very, very, very cheap from someone. So I got the stock short block, and then I ended up ordering some heads, some cylinder heads from Kill Devil Diesel, just the regular cast iron, O-ringed heads. They got, I think it has 100 PSI valve springs on them. Yeah. And then I was like, well, I really don't want to use regular ARPs. I want to make sure I have no head gasket issues, and currently the setup that's on it, I mean, it would be perfectly fine with just regular studs, it's not making anything crazy power wise, right now, but I just said, what, for the future, when I do different turbo setups or, doing different injectors, different things, I'm like, I just don't want any issues with head gaskets. So I ended up getting, 625 ARPs for it. And at that time too, all like the crazy COVID shortages were going on, and nobody had anything. I mean, I was calling all these people trying to find the studs, nobody had them. And ARPs just like right down the road for me. I mean, they're like, I could probably ride my bicycle over there. I mean, they're super close, So I of course I called them, and they're like, nope, 625. No, we won't have any for a few months, and they're back ordered. I'm like, okay, that's what everybody's saying. I called J&K, I called, everyone, anybody that I could think of. So my father-in-law, he's kind of like the eBay king, he just like always finds stuff on eBay. He's really good at that. So I had him find me some 625. So, and I paid like a little over, probably retail price for him. I paid a little too much for him, to be honest, but I just wanted him. I was like, I don't care. I want him, I'm not going to be able to get him for like 3 months. So I ended up buying them off eBay from like a reputable seller on there. And then ARP called me like a week later. They called my boss and they go, oh, hey, I got those studs for your guy, $1,000, tell him to come pick them up. I was like, you guys told me you wouldn't have them for 3 months, So yeah, I was kind of bummed, but whatever. My boss ended up buying them, and then we put them in his shop excursion. So I was like, well, I guess at least somebody got them. But yeah, so after I got the studs and everything and the heads, so right around, I guess, when I got the short block too, because I still had kind of that mindset of like, I just wanted to tune it and drive it or whatever, kind of thing. I didn't have any plans for doing anything really much over tuning, I guess. So one of my friends, he had 190/30s in his truck, and they probably only had like 10,000 miles on them or so. So he was like, yo, I want to go back to stock injectors and stuff. And, if you put, stock injectors in for me, I'll give you the 190/30s. I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll do that, So I ended up coming up on some 190/30s, and they had, really, really low miles, and they were the good Warren Pure Power 190/30. So they're the top of the line, injectors from Warren with really low miles on them. Plus, I got a fast lift pump in that deal also. And so I was like, okay, and we have a guy locally here who does some turbo stuff for us. He kind of told me to leave his name out of it because he sells parts to a lot of different vendors that you and I actually both know, big name people. But so he ended up giving me, it's just, basic kind of VGT charger. It's like a 63.5, with like a 66 turbine, but it doesn't have your typical 10 blade on it. It actually has a 9 blade turbine wheel on it. So uh, he had a source, I think he still does, but he was doing some testing with the 9 blades. So I don't know if you've heard like a 9 blade turbo or not. I think he's got some turbos out, on the Duramaxes with the 9 blade, and I think a few with the 6.7s too. But the 9 blade, it sounds pretty wicked. I know a couple of people that are running like the 65 mil version, and he told me too. He's like, if you want, I can make it a 65 mil, and just let me know or whatever. So, I basically got the turbo for free, which is really cool. And the guy that built it, he's super cool guy, super nice guy. I would love to mention his name, but he told me, oh, just leave my name out of it because he only wants to deal with those vendors. He's like, I don't want anybody hitting me up though. I'm like, all right, don't worry about it. I wish I could because he's a really cool dude. And he's got a really cool Cummins too, 12 valve that's compounded and stuff, and that my brother actually built. So, but yeah, super cool guy. So yeah, so I kind of got that stuff, the injectors and the turbo kind of for a really good deal, like almost like free. I did, the injectors I got, kind of doing like a side job type deal with the fast. So now I'm like, all right, like, so it's going to be a little bit more than just a tune truck now, so that's kind of where it's at now. And then, I also got an ODOG SR3 intake manifold for it. And so let's see what else. I got a Warren Diesel WDI low pressure oil pump for it. So they're billet low pressure oil pump. I kind of just got that for like, insurance kind of purposes. On the 6.0s, the low pressure oil pump, usually with like a little bit higher horsepower trucks, not even sometimes the higher horsepower trucks, but they'll tend to break, when you're revving them really hard. It happens a lot usually with like the 6-speed trucks too, like people really revving them out and stuff. So I ended up buying a billet low pressure pump just for kind of like, I'm like, well, maybe in the future, yeah, when I move up injectors or, I would just like to have it, for peace of mind kind of thing. So yeah, and then I got the driven diesel regulator return on it. There's probably like a million people that probably have a very similar setup, but it's mainly, it's just like a fun little like, street build kind of truck. That's really like kind of what I intended on it, and kind of the threshold, I guess, for 6.0s, is like 550 to 600, where that's kind of like still a pretty reliable, daily driven street, truck. And I actually have the truck came with a brand new stock Ford Reman Trans that only has about 15,000 miles on it. So the guy put a brand new trans in it at the dealership. And then about 15,000 miles later, his lifter took a crap, and then Ford told him, oh yeah, you need a new long block. And then he was like, oh, I'm selling it, so yeah. That's when I got it. So I kind of got lucky on that, so, and the stock trans, they usually like, that's kind of their breaking point. So, everyone says, about, 550, I know there's people out there that are pushing them, more power, but, I guess with good tuning and everything, hopefully it lasts a little while, like I said, I'm like, when I just get it running, all I want to do, I just want to cruise it around. I'm not going to break it right away. I got to get, used to driving it a little bit, and enjoy it a tiny bit. So
when do you think you're going to put the engine, drop it into the truck and get it running?
Well, I was actually, the day you messaged me, I was planning on doing that. Believe it or not, I had all the engine harness. I basically had everything on it ready, about to drop in. I have the whole front clip off the truck right now. And then you messaged me and you're like, oh yeah, maybe have the engine in the background. I'm like, well, it kind of doesn't look as good as it did in the pictures because now the nasty harness is on it. And, they just look like crap, once you put the harness on them and, some of the other stupid little things, so yeah, I was actually going to drop in actually either Thursday or maybe today. So, but since we have a 3-day weekend, hopefully maybe tomorrow, yeah, I've been really getting really antsy, recently. I'm just like, I've been telling my wife, I'm like, I need to finish my truck. I need to finish my truck. And so she's like, just finish it, and she kind of has a joke like, we don't even have kids yet, but she's like, yeah, maybe your O3 will be done, when our kids get their driver's license in private school. I'm like, no, it's getting done soon, it has to happen this month. So yeah, we have a little like board like in our bedroom of like things we need to get done. I wrote need to finish O3 like in capital letters, every morning I see it. So but that's my plan anyways. So
What are three tips you would give somebody who they want a 6 liter, they want to build it, but it's not like just handing the credit card over right away to do it. They want to do it in stages. What are three things you would say, do this, or three tips to help them reach that goal? Not for like a crazy 2,000 horsepower build, but something that's fun to drive on the street that they're gonna tow with daily drive and just kind of get it where they want it to be.
well, I always tell people that like come by the shop, that are just kind of getting into the truck. I mean, of course, you want to have somebody that's pretty knowledgeable, kind of just go over it. A lot of people will bring their trucks to the shop and they'll kind of do like a, 3-point inspection on it or whatever. We'll run the IDS on there and check for codes and kind of just make sure the truck's in good health. The oil cooler, is in good health. The temps are where they should be. And everything's kind of just, working properly, and then I would say, get a monitor, to where you could monitor, some of your temps and, battery voltage, FICM voltage, oil coolant, some of the important things, that you kind of got to watch for on the 6.0s. And then, I would say if the truck's, like in really, pretty healthy condition and all that stuff. And of course, change the oil and, do all fresh fluids. You never know with the past person,
Yep.
how they maintain it. They might tell you that, they change the oil every 5,000 miles or whatever, but who knows what kind of oil they're running, just kind of do a whole fresh, like fluid change on the thing. And then I would say, if the truck is in good, healthy condition, probably, do some tuning. I would say that's like everybody, probably most all diesel enthusiasts, that's like the
Yep.
first thing everyone does, is, oh, like, how could I tune it? Or, whose tune should I use or whatever. And there's, a few really good, tuners out there now, that are really well known in the, on that platform that have been out for years. So the tuning has came a long way for those trucks too, and you could have a really fun, good running truck, with just, yeah, like I was saying before, just tuning alone, and the trans and everything, can handle it just fine, most of the time. If the trans is in good health, I mean, it'll handle tuning no problem. I mean, even with usually the hottest tune on it. So, yeah. And then I would say, maybe like, the next thing I would do is, if they want to do like all the, some of the updated stuff, I always tell people when they come in, they're like, I want to do head studs. I want to do new heads, kind of preventatively. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that, but, I'd always start with doing like an EGR cooler, getting the, good solid EGR cooler on there, doing all the updates. If it's like an O5, or even some of the O4s, the dummy plugs, standpipes, T-fitting, all the kind of little update, little problematic kind of things. Pull the turbo out, clean the turbo, clean all the vanes, all the little stupid upgrade, little things that you could do on them. Yeah, I mean, but first and foremost, I always tell people get like an Edge CTS 2 or 3. They got the 3 out now. It's a really, really nice unit. That'd be like probably the first things I would do, but yeah, definitely, and if you're bringing your truck to a shop, make sure that, they're kind of familiar with that platform, and, it always helps, when the mechanics themselves drive the trucks. I talk to the customers, and they're always kind of stoked. They come in there and they go, oh yeah, my junk 6.0 and this and that. I'm like, oh yeah, I have two of them. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I love them. Almost everybody actually at our shop has had one at one time or another. So at least like 5 or 6 of the guys have had a 6.0. My boss has one. Our shop excursion. My brother had one at one point. And yeah, a few of the other guys that I've worked with. So, we really like them, but, we work on, of course, all Fords across the board. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, if you're bringing your truck to a shop, you're having somebody else work on it, say, definitely kind of, do a little bit of research into the shop. And, because we get a lot of trucks that come in, and they're just hammered from other shops, other people that have worked on them. The harness is all tore up. They put, and then they bring them to our shop and they're kind of mad because they got to put more money into them because previous shop that really didn't know how to work on them, put less than stock parts on them, worse than stock parts, back on the thing when they fixed it. And now it's failed again. So, no, now they're even more mad. They got to go in there and spend, a few more grand, on us with us, fixing the last person that worked on it. So, we always try to do, things that we would do to our own trucks, and that's kind of how I treat, most of the customers' trucks is, really how I'd kind of treat mine. And that's kind of how I give them advice, and, so then they're pretty happy, they're like, okay, like this guy likes 6.0s, so yeah, I mean, that's probably what I would suggest to most people. And then, if they're working on themselves, just, yeah, make sure you do your research, go on the forums, go on the Facebook forums, join some of those, and there's actually quite a bit of knowledgeable guys on there, even a lot of the big 6.0 guys, are on there and stuff. And, you kind of just got to weed through some of the stuff, there's a lot of different, there's some bad advice on there too, but you kind of got to just weed through all of that stuff. And, but yeah, just definitely do your research and, take it slow. And there, of course, there's a lot of, good YouTube videos out there. And, of course, you can reach out to other people too, and other shops and, people that are working on their trucks themselves. Sometimes they reach out to me and ask me, certain things. And, sometimes I don't get back to every single person, but, I try to, as much as I can. And, yeah, I mean, that's what I would suggest, I guess.
That's what's really cool about this build. And you'd mentioned earlier in the podcast, the price of used vehicles, new ones are really expensive. And I see a lot of times, if you're going to look for a low mileage, whatever kind, it's the Duramax, Cummins, Powerstroke, they can be 30, 40, close to $50,000. And I think of new enthusiasts, and I think of people wanting to get into this, and there's still being a path to do it, and finding the right truck, sourcing the parts, talking to people, making really good decisions. And I know the way you built it, a lot of other people are going to want to do that as well. So for people who are listening, they want to see the truck run, see the engine, see what you've done with it, maybe ask you some questions. Where can they find you on Instagram, be able to reach out to you and check out the build?
Yeah, just my Instagram, Austin Linquist 60. And then I got a Facebook, it's just Austin Linquist. And that's usually where I talk to most people, I'm not like crazy active, but anytime I, have some cool pictures, anything, I always throw it out there. But yeah, anybody can reach me there for sure, and and I always love talking to people, it's just super cool. This industry is just it's a really like unique industry, it really is. And it's just super cool. Like, like I was mentioning, like some of those guys, like the big people in the industry, like the people that I look up to and the people that, I wish I could be like, I've even talked to some of those guys a little bit, and they're just cool, humble guys, most people, and I know they're always crazy busy. I'm sure they have, a million people trying to message them, but it is really cool when they take just like a little bit of time, to talk or whatever. But yeah, the diesel industry and everything and the people involved. I mean, it is a really, really cool industry. And I'm pretty blessed to actually have a job, like this, and it's only going to grow from here. I'm always learning new things, and, I mean, almost every day, I'm learning something stupid small. I don't know everything, that's for sure. I still have a long way to go. I'm just a tiny little fish in a huge pond or ocean or whatever. I'm just a wannabe, I guess. I don't know. But I have, lots of goals and ambitions, and slowly but surely it's happening. I mean, really, really slowly, but it's happening.
Well, that's what's really cool about, doing a podcast like this and connecting with you, and, being able to hear the passion, see it, and know there's thousands of other people out there in the same position. And it was really cool to connect like this. Sorry that we delayed the install of your engine by a little bit.
Oh,
but...
no. Hey, this was totally worth it. Trust me. It didn't matter what time you said. It could have been 3 a.m. I still would have done it. I mean, to be on your podcast, right away when you sent me that message, I screenshot it, sent it to my wife, and she's like, "Oh, wow, babe, you're happy, So, cause she knows, she knows how in love, I am with all this stuff. And, she, surprisingly, she has like a very good memory. She remembers almost everything I say, she could tell you probably everything that I've done to it. Anytime we go out in the garage, I'm like, "Hey babe, look at my engine." She's like, "Yes, I've see it every day." She's like, "Maybe one day it'll be in the truck," but,
well, definitely
yeah.
keep us updated on it. Let us know when you get it in, get it running. And, yeah, we love to follow the builds of guests that we have, and see them progress. I like I said, I appreciate your time jumping on here today, chatting with me, and we look forward to seeing the progress for a lot of people listening or watching, as well. It's cool build. It was awesome to hear your story, and I appreciate your time today.
For sure. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you and coming on here, and thanks to Anthony again, of course, alerting you. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kiausa.com. Use code diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. They got a ton of different choices, bunch of different knives, outdoor gear, hunting, fishing, EDC, around the house, at the job site. It's a really cool place. Love seeing the gear you guys have gotten, and we appreciate them offering it to you guys to be able to save some money and get some cool gear that you want. Also want to thank some of our patrons that have helped us grow over the years, helped us do different things with audio, video, lighting, tons of different things we wanted to bring you guys. So I want to give a shout out to Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, also Kaleb, all of our other Patreons, all of you guys who subscribe on podcast apps, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You guys keep us going. We love hearing from you. Love hearing what kind of builds you're working on, your questions, things you want to know about diesel industry, or even outside the diesel industry. If we can incorporate it into the podcast, we definitely will. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.